Okay, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone in our various places. I am delighted to be chairing this next session of the International Communal Studies Association first ever entirely online conference. And our presenter for this session is Boaz Feldman. Boaz is the founder of Systemics, excuse me, an integrative NGO that builds resiliency through trainings around the world. He's also a clinical psychologist and Dharma teacher in the Insight meditation tradition. His workshop is called Nervous System Approaches for Resilient Community Living. And welcome, Boaz.
Thank you very much, Dan. And thank you to the wider ICSA community to welcome and to invite me in. And I'm looking forward to spend this very cozy time together. This not so many of us, and so it's an opportunity perhaps to go a little bit deeper. Well, to begin, what I propose is a little meditation. Maybe just 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, so not very long, but just as a way of arriving, as a way of connecting into the body, connecting into this space together. And as we will see, this is also relevant to some of the content, which I'll share in a few minutes. So I invite you in your space, in your chair, or maybe your bed, or maybe the floor, just to take a couple of moments and feel whatever comfort is there. Maybe you're in a comfortable chair, maybe there's a sense of contact with the floor. Welcome, Vic. Maybe there's a sense of feeling the weight of the body on the ground, on the earth, feeling embraced by the earth. And we can close our eyes, we can keep them open. It's just going to be 2 minutes. Maybe we feel the breath coming in, the breath coming out right now. And so whatever is here, whatever we're aware of, whatever is present in the body, just welcoming that, like welcoming an old friend. In whichever shape, whichever sensation or mood we may be. And noticing these maybe last minute of the meditation, is there any shift in our experience as we give ourselves a few moments to arrive? Maybe the shoulders are a bit more relaxed. Maybe we feel the body a bit heavier on the chair. Maybe not much different. That would be welcome as well. And so in a moment, I'm going to ring a bell. And I invite us really just to enjoy the 20 seconds as it arises in the space. Apparently, Beatrice, I can't share screen anymore. So if you can make me co-host or... Great, thank you. So just noticing how the bell feels right now in the body, in the space. So a warm welcome again to all of you. And I invite us, as we just begin this sort of reconnecting time into the space, maybe just to say one word. We can open up our mic if we feel like, or we can write it in the chat. Like, how are we doing right now? What's the felt sense? We have one word to summarize it, like a check-in. I mean, it can also be a couple of words or a short sentence. Yeah, so content, Cornelia, settling into the day, Dan, on hold. Aharon, is that how you say your name? Or is
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
super?
Um,
Aharon,
I want
and
to know because I'm okay. I'll tell you later.
yeah, just I'll gladly hear a bit more about it. So that's a great check-in for now. And then a peaceful for Beatrice and schism, schism for Vic. That's fantastic. And so let's just take a couple of extra moments and notice, like we've all shared something, and I can share that I feel a bit relaxed, let's say a bit more relaxed. And so we've all shared now. And let's just take a moment together and notice, how is it to know how others are doing? What does it do to our nervous system? What does it do to our experience right now to see how others are doing, whether they're doing well or not well? Yeah, what's that like? What's the felt sense? What's the impact on our hearts, on our body? Yeah, so reassuring for Dan, you're curious, Aaron. I'm also reassured. There's a sense of reassurance, feeling like more settled. Yeah, and you're curious to know what lies behind the other word, like maybe there's a story. Expectant, Cornelia. Yeah, great. Safer, Vic. Yeah, thank you. So there's a general sense, if we were to do some statistics, just based on some of the data we have here, we could say that there's a majority of us who actually feel like it's a helpful experience. It's a positive experience. It's a grounding experience to know how others are doing. And so we're able to do that because we're all sort of bringing our courage together and being vulnerable in terms of bringing ourselves in the space in an authentic way, maybe free from judgment, or maybe we're not sure how it's going to go. And so, I've also constrained it to one word, so we don't have to say, our whole life story, but maybe there is an impulse to say more. And actually, I wanted to check, Aaron, because maybe you were sort of on a move to share a little bit more. So if you wanted to say what was behind that, I'm also curious.
Oh, well, the reason I'm on hold because I'm leaving a few hours to the airport to join Dan at the Harvard Divinity School as his fellow. That's why I apologize. I have to do my lunch during this session because I'm doing the next session and then I need to go to the airport. So that's my. So I'm trying to be relaxed and be here, but no, just that's how life has been organized.
Exactly. Yeah. And thank you for explaining that. And I'm excited for you, that you would be going to join Dan in Harvard pretty soon, even today, it looks like you're saying.
Well, I'm going to do Shabbat in New York, and then I'll be there next week. But for
Okay.
the first day of the semester. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the.
That's the plan. Yeah.
That's the plan.
Super. And you're very welcome to eat. As we'll see as well in this session, like comfort and being able to follow our rhythm and to listen to our bodies is a big part of how we can be connected to our own experience and how we go and then also be more open, be more present with others. So if you want to have your main lunch, if you want to go out and get your ice cream, I mean, I don't know what you have planned, but you're very welcome. And that really that's the case for all of us. If we need to, get up and get some water, of course, feel free to manage your situation as most comfortable as possible. So thank you for playing the game with me a little bit in these first few minutes. In a way, our space here is as much a space where I'll share a few insights and some sort of background elements around safety and around the role of regulation, nervous system regulation within ourselves and in relational spaces to be able to create resilient communities. And it's also an experience in and of itself. So hopefully, by the end of this 1 hour and a half, each of us will have had an experience where actually we will perhaps feel a little bit more open, a little bit more regulated, a little bit more, we could say, brighter in our hearts. And so that's the direction. And yeah, I appreciate all of you having co-created and participated already up until now, and I will be soliciting all of us a bit more throughout this session. And we'll also have a little time for some breakout rooms later on. So we'll have some time for shorter, sort of smaller group interaction. Welcome to you. Hayu. I'm not sure if that's how you say your name.
Yes, my name's Hayu.
So a warm welcome to you. You're welcome to share a little bit in the chat as well about where you're from. And I think Beatrice, maybe we can put in that little comment again so that Hayu can introduce herself in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry I joined oh yeah, I
Sure.
saw the chat.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I'm currently in China. So like my career is nothing related to this community thing, but outside of my career, I'm very interested and I helped starting some of the community related groups in China and is spanning all over the world right now. So I'm interested in this conference because one of my friends from that community recommended me this.
Wonderful.
But obviously it's not the best timing for me, so that's why I just joined.
Yeah, it's very late. Well, thank you for that introduction. And we've all had a little meditation and got to know each other a little bit. So perhaps now we're able to form a little bit more of a whole. Thank you very much, Hayu. So I'll share with you just a couple of slides that I prepared to give a little context as to what we mean by regulation, what we mean by the nervous system, and the ways in which practically then we can deepen our capacity collectively, internally, and relationally to feel better, to feel more regulated, to be more present, and to be able to take in our inner experience in a deeper, more perhaps sacred way, and relate to others similarly. So let's share this. Okay. So at Neurosystemics, which is an organization I founded, I come from, as a clinical psychologist, I come from, one of my areas of interest has been trauma and trauma healing through the body. So particularly through somatic experiencing. And so I worked with a number of different organizations. And one of the things that I felt drawn to a little bit more than was present in these organizations was the way in which we work with the nervous system and through somatic experience in relationship. Oftentimes, these modalities tend to be one-to-one therapy or one-to-one work. And I'm wondering, well, actually, isn't there a way we could work with groups or even communities? And so that has really been an area of mine that's grown, an area of interest. And that's also then why I built my model in the way in which I did. So initially, we're going to be looking at regulation in the nervous system from an individual perspective. You could say a intrapsychic perspective or interoceptive perspective, which is one of the technical terms. And then we'll shift to see how the individual is actually embedded and evolutionarily wired within a sense of community, within a sense of a group, as a baseline form of regulation. So we're going to be making the link between individual regulation and regulation within a group. And actually, I even wanted to go further and include society, because we are individuals, but we're individuals within groups and communities, and these communities are embedded in societies. And inevitably, those societies have an impact on how regulated or how dysregulated our communities, our groups, and we are as individuals. Especially right now, there's obviously been a big move towards inclusion in relationship to the LGBTIQ community. I know in the US, a very strong move towards race and class in terms of equity. And in Europe, there are obviously lots of struggles with the populist uprising and the nationalist movements. And all of these have a lot of impact on how regulated or dysregulated we feel as individuals and also as groups. And so I also want to see, and we might not do so much of that today, but to see how do systemic dynamics dysregulate or regulate groups and individuals. And so at least that's in the model. So one of the main frames that I'd like to bring up today is an evolutionary frame. And for me, evolutionary sciences are just so cool, basically, first of all, and then like rigorous and exciting because they tell us a story of how things have come to be today, or at least the state of the science that is able to understand it and study it today. So 4.5 billion years ago, there was the Earth. And then we came forth with bacteria, life emerged 3.5 billion years ago. And then there was this movement of increasing complexity with individual cells merging with other cells and forming multicellular life with plants and fungi. And then the Cambrian explosion around 500 million years ago, where suddenly there was like a huge systems shift around how life forms started to be connected to its environment with senses. So there, animals started to have eyes and ears and noses and just more sensitivity. And that life just keeps on being more orderly and more complex, with fish and then amphibians, reptiles and birds, and then mammals around 70 million years ago. And then suddenly today, humans, just very short span of time, if you look at it from sort of deep time, as it's called. And so what can we learn from this wider arc of how life has evolved in increasing orderly complexity? Well, one of the things we can take from this is that our biological evolution, our nervous system, our bodies, the way in which our physiology functions, is not from today. When they discover something in the clinical sciences and they say, oh, actually, to have too much glucose and to clog up your arteries with sugar is unhealthy. It's not like this is nothing new. It's just something that we are discovering, but actually these processes have been evolving for millennia. And so when we talk about the nervous system, it's really central to think about and understand how all these other species, perhaps these what we could call less complex, which doesn't mean less precious or less sacred, but perhaps that's complex in terms of their evolution, the species and how they function. And that's really been one of the key ways in which we've been able to understand our own nervous systems as mammals. So biology has a huge part, and we'll look into it a little bit in terms of how the body functions, the nervous system, the central intelligence, and then the brain, which has become more complex through this as well. And the second thing we can take is cultural evolution. I don't know if you can see this properly there. I'll annotate it. Cultural evolution is a fairly recent phenomenon if you look at it from deep time perspective. And basically what we mean by culture is things that we can learn that are passed on through behavior. And so these habits, these new ways of learning, which are not instinctual and that are not sort of biological through perhaps genetic modification, they are learned through social interaction. And these social interactions are very present today. And so what are the cultural dynamics that are at play that will sort of have a meta influence, like a really large influence on how we experience the world? And we're not going to go so much into it today, these sort of cultural patterns of evolution. That's more sort of the systemic level, the fourth level I was showing earlier. But just to say, when we talk about the nervous system, it's not just a biological phenomenon. It's not just a physiological process. There's a lot of the ways in which we interact, even in this session today. The fact that, Beatrice, you were inviting us to share a little bit about who we are and where we're from, and that everybody shared in the check-in. That's we could say a ritual or a way of coming together that changes how we experience this session. If I opened the session and I didn't even let Dan speak and then introduce me and then just show my slides and nobody could say anything, like we would probably all feel differently in this session. It's like, well, who is this kind of narcissistic, old kind of, big-headed guy who's just taking all the space and not offering any kind of, grounding for us to be able to feel good. Okay, so biology and culture, these processes are really important. And one of the theories that's been, let me see if I can delete this. Okay, here we go. One of the theories that helps us to understand that's been quite systematic in terms of nervous system dynamics is the polyvagal theory from Stephen Porges, which basically explains that the nervous system arose in evolution to help us face threats. So we've wanted to survive as a species, whether we're bacteria or plants or animals. And we've developed increasingly intelligent ways of responding to threats. And so we can think of the nervous system as like a way of a central intelligence system in the body that helps us to respond more efficiently to threats. And the first sort of big system that arose is the freeze system. Does that feel familiar for anyone? The freeze system, when we fall into immobility. Okay, so, and we all know about like the lizard on the road or on the wall. Right? I'm in Mozambique right now, and so there's actually none right now, but there's usually lots of lizards walking up and down. And as soon as they see me, I love watching them. And as soon as they see me, what do? They completely stop moving, and they sort of roll their eyes a little bit, and then they stop. And so they immobilize themselves because they think if they don't move, then they think I don't see them, because then they sort of mix in the environment. So freeze is one of those systems, and it's quite a complex system. We're not going to go into detail today, but that's one of the systems. And then we evolved a capacity for fight and flight. So there's some data to show today even that there's a hierarchy, and we developed first a flight system and then a fight system evolutionarily. And so basically we've increased our capacity to face threats. Instead of just hoping in being immobile that we're going to be able to get away from the threats, we're able to take more action. So we run away, flight, or we face the threat head on, and then we're able to perhaps, kill the threat like a lion or leopard. I mean, as humans, we're also pretty feisty. I would be surprised if nobody here ever gets angry or a little bit frustrated when there's any challenges. So I think we all know that fight system, right? But then we went even further. A couple of million years ago, we developed this orientation and social engagement system. And that's really like a gold mine and something for us to explore a bit further. And we'll practice it today as well in this workshop, how we can embody this orientation and social engagement system a bit more. And basically, orientation and social engagement means that we are present in the moment. When we are practicing mindfulness, like we did in the beginning of this session, we are not in fight, flight, and freeze. And so there is an inverse relationship between social engagement and orientation and fight, flight, and freeze. And the more we are present, the more we are connected to our own experience and also connected to others, and that others are connected to us, the less we have chance to fall into these threat nervous system states. And so that tells us a lot about how to be with others in the space in a way that favors, in a way that supports us to be more present, to be more bright, to be more enlightened to our own experience and with others. So we're going to look much more at this system here. What does it mean to be oriented, and how can we strengthen our capacity to socially engage? So that might be, so I've summarized here just some of the ways in which we can think of these systems. So when we're in orientation and social engagement, I'm connected to myself, to the world, to others in the world. Maybe we'll just pass on the neuroception for a moment. It's not so essential. The second system, fight or flight, I'm in danger, so either I fight or I flee. And then finally, in freeze, I'm overwhelmed. And when I experience a situation where I'm overwhelmed, then I just shut down. And literally, you can see animals, they lose consciousness. Like you may have seen a zebra, for example, or running around, and then you have a lion, and then the zebra will sort of fall down on the ground and act as though it's dead. And they're not acting intentionally, by the way. This is all sort of involuntary nervous system response. But the fact that they act dead makes the lion think that actually perhaps the zebra's been dead for a long time and they don't want to get sick, and eat bad meat. So they'll let the zebra go and they'll just turn around, and then the zebra can run back. And so this freeze system then is a form of shutting down. And as humans, we can freeze without necessarily falling down on the ground with our eyes closed. Sometimes we will feel in freeze, and fawn is just actually a differentiated form of freeze that's also becoming more prominent in the literature, where sometimes, if a child receives some aggression or some strong language or being punished by a parent or a teacher or such, then they might sort of get stuck into freeze, even though they might still look as though they're totally alive and such. So this freeze system is like, there's many levels to it. We won't go into all of it today, but it's a really powerful system where at least parts of our system shut down. And in particular case with children, for example, as I just said, emotionally and even spiritually, perhaps we could say, but not necessarily. So we'll look at self-regulation and co-regulation, which are ways of increasing our capacity for social engagement and orientation, and reducing our sort of neurobiological propensity to fall into fight, flight, and freeze states. We'll practice this. Okay, just one minute on neurobio for those of you who are sort of geeky and really enjoying this. We're not going to spend a long time on it, but basically there's all sorts of systems that are connected to the vagal cranial nerve, the cranial nerve number 10 mostly, but these other nerves as well. Whereby when we feel threat in the environment, so this is the environment, we feel threat, then all of these systems tend to shut down. And they shut down through brainstem activation and shut down all higher forms of cortical activity. So we basically fall into what we all know, right? When we feel very threatened or very stressed, we just tend to do things automatically. Would you agree? When you feel very stressed, it's just like automatic pilot, right? There's this sense of just falling back into our own habits. And when we look at the environment here, I'd like to practice it in two ways today. One is the inner environment. Because what we know today as well from contemplative science is that the way in which we relate to our experience creates an ecosystem for those experiences. Okay, so we are in a room, right? And we are also in this Zoom room, which is part of the conference. And so we could say the ICSA is one of the ecosystems for us as a small group. And the very physical room that we are in is the physical ecosystem for us as individuals. And we could say that the visual perception or the thought that we have right now or the feeling that we are experiencing right now is one part of a larger ecosystem of our mind, of our soul. And so inside, we have all of these conditions that influence our experience. This is what we say, for example, in Buddhism. I was a Buddhist monk in Thailand for a while and continued to do lots of silent meditation retreat. And one of the ways in which we understand meditation is to really create an abode, a divine abode, so that all feelings, all physical sensations, and all ways of engaging with the world can be felt within these divine abodes of compassion, equanimity, joy. And so when we practice meditation, what we're doing is we're building this house of compassion. We're building this house of love, of care, of awareness. So that when I experience, for example, if one of you right now was looking at me and, with eyes like this, I could get quite scared. It's like, oh my goodness, maybe they're really angry with me, right? And if I've practiced all of this meditation and this compassion and maybe this equanimity, I can feel the fear. Sure, I can feel the fear. And yet fear is just one part of a larger ecosystem in which this fear is arising. And there's also sort of maybe curiosity. It's like, oh, I wonder what's going on for them, that they're quite angry. Maybe, they just got some bad news, or maybe they don't like my mohawk, and like, that's okay. Not everybody has to like my mohawk. It is kind of a weird hairstyle. So there are different ways in which I can relate to the experience by cultivating these qualities inside. And that's what we're going to look at when we talk about the inner social engagement. And that helps to regulate my experience. So if you look at me very angrily and I go through this process, it's like I can feel quite relaxed and open-hearted and really present with you, even though you might be very angry with me. Or maybe I'm very angry with myself, but then there's another part that, oh, I understand I'm very angry with myself because yada, yada, yada. It's just another form. And then we'll look at the environment, the way in which we can create an environment together that is co-regulatory. So just to give you a specific example on this to make it more concrete, when we shared in the beginning how we're doing, and we shared how it was for us to notice how others were doing. Remember, we did that. Most of us were kind of reassured. Dan and I were reassured. Others were curious. And so that creates an environment where we can help one another to feel embodied, to feel good, to feel grounded in the moment. Right? So we'll look a little bit around that, but we'll start with self-regulation for now. So let's go into it. In our experience, let's open it up a little bit. When we pay attention to our experience, what is there? What do we notice? And feel free to write in the chat or to open up your mic. What kind of experiences can we be aware of, even right now?
Well, we have the six senses. That's the most basic form of experience, which
Exactly.
we tend to shut off. We don't pay attention to every sense we sense, but it's there.
Yeah, brilliant. So there's the six senses. Well, you said six, or did you say five?
Five. Sorry, yeah. Maybe
No,
I
but
have
that's
six, but
that's
yeah.
You have six. Yeah, well, that's interesting because in the Buddhist tradition, we also talk about a sixth sense, and the sixth sense as being the mind. So the
Yeah, but
mind.
that's a different level of experience, I think. That's
Yeah, so maybe I don't know which tradition you're referring to, but particularly in the Buddhist tradition, actually, it's quite a basic sort of mental awareness of what's present or a thought. Like if you're aware of your thought, then that's the sixth sense. It's not necessarily kind of a special power, like sometimes it might feel like it is. Yeah. So we have the five senses. Okay, great. So we have the body, right? The body. So we're aware of like the taste buds that you're eating. Maybe we're drinking some tea. What else are we? What else is present in our experience? We pay attention to what our mood is or how we're experiencing this moment. How is it for you right now?
Well, I'm mainly relating through absorbing information and then sort of doing this inside and still trying to get something there. And then there's also my sixth sense has a lot to do with gut rather than with what you just described about the Buddhist sixth sense. My sixth sense is more difficult, in an online.
Sure.
But it's still there. I still have impressions that don't go up here all the time.
Yeah.
So lots going on. And the question is, what do I prioritize and how do I conjoin the different levels in my phone? Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Cornelia, for sharing that. And so one of the things I'm picking up from what you're saying there is a sense of reflection. There's some thinking going on, right? There's thinking going on about, this information and how does it make sense to me? And, can I pick it up, etc. So there's sort of a meaning making, we could say, or reflecting around that. Yeah. Brilliant. So we have the body, we have thinking, and do we have a heart? Do we each have a heart? Yeah. And what does the heart do? It generally feels things, right? So we probably feel some kind of emotion right now. Maybe some of us are feeling relaxed. Maybe some of us are feeling tense or stressed or excited. So we have all these different experiences, which we can summarize basically as a mosaic. In neurosystemics, we talk about meaning. So that's what you described there, Cornelia. Orientation, we will practice that in a moment. Sensation is, obviously awareness of our body. Then we have feelings. And sometimes we have images, right? In dreams, for example. Or when we think about something, rather than thinking with words, sometimes it just comes through more intuitively with images. And then there's awareness. So let's practice a little bit of orientation and see how it is for us to practice that and see what kind of impact it has on our nervous system. Yeah. So again, we'll do this will take about 2 or 3 minutes. And I invite you to find a comfortable posture wherever you are, to relax into your chair, to relax into your seat, into your ground. And I invite you to let your eyes go where they want to go. So maybe we're watching the screen, maybe we're looking around, maybe there's something that catches our curiosity that we enjoy around in our space. So we're letting our eyes go where they want to go, and we're noticing also what's it like in the body to just sit back and let our body lead where our awareness is going. And when we find something that's interesting, when our eyes stop somewhere, maybe we can just take a moment and enjoy that. Maybe we're watching a plant or something outside the window, or there's a photo. Maybe it's this screen. And we can just let ourselves, just for a few moments, settle into wherever our eyes stop by themselves. And as we do that, noticing also the impact on how we're breathing, as we let our eyes go where they want to go, or maybe they want to close, maybe they're tired, or maybe you still feel like you want to be open and travel around, be curious about things around. And so we're connecting with the environment around us in this moment, in the present moment. And at the same time, we're also noticing our body and how it's impacting our body to be present to the space. Maybe it's restful, maybe it's agitating. And just for a last few moments, noticing our relationship to the environment, how it feels to be in this space. And again, I invite your participation if you're willing to share a word or a short sentence verbally or in the chat. What's it like to practice this a little bit, where we're noticing our relationship to the space around us and letting our eyes go where they want to go? What does that do? How does it impact us? Yeah, it's relaxing. For me, it's restful. Like, there's a sense of the tension around the eyes is softening. Yeah, you notice things in your study room which you don't usually notice, even though you spend many, many hours. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, Yeah. So there's like a sense of freshness and sort of a discovery as well, new sense of presence in the space. Yeah. Yeah. And so orientation is this capacity that our nervous system has developed about 500 million years ago through the Cambrian evolutionary process. And it's really quite basic, right? This sense of just noticing ourselves in the space. So it's not even connecting to our inner experience yet. It's more just noticing what's around us. And in fact, in our nervous system, we're doing this all the time. Subliminally, our nervous system is checking out whether we feel safe or unsafe about 400 times per second. Can you believe it? It's like there are receptors around 400 times per second checking out, how safe am I? Am I safe? Am I not safe? Am I safe? Am I not safe? So in Switzerland, I'm from Switzerland, we have lots of squirrels. And it was just autumn recently, so there were lots of squirrels running around in the parks and in the city. And I live in a nature area, so I'm very lucky. And you can see very much when the squirrels, you know, they burrow in the ground, they get ready to get their food, and then suddenly, you know, you notice them doing that. They get up and then they watch, and then they see, ah, okay, everything's safe. Okay, so I can go back, and then they burrow some more, and then they move around. And that's a very distinct, very explicit form of orientation. And yet, internally, even though they're burrowing, their aware nervous system is still sort of, we could say, scanning. Technically, we talk about scanning the environment to see how safe we are. And so one of the things that's important to consider when we think about feeling good, feeling grounded, feeling regulated, is to ask ourselves, actually, what helps me feel safe and what helps me feel unsafe in the moment? And if I'm able to answer my question, you know, what helps me feel safe? Okay, for me, for example, to feel safe in this space, it's helpful to know who's organizing. It's helpful to know who has what role. You know, am I talking? Are you talking? It's helpful to know when this session ends, when it starts. Let's say you didn't know when the session ends and you were here and you had no idea when this was going to be over. I mean, imagine how it would make you feel. You know, we probably feel a bit uncertain, right? And so we all have things that we need to be able to feel safe. And so the more we think about it, and obviously we don't want to be obsessed with it. I mean, that's like maybe taking it too far. But if we're able to say, okay, I need this and this and this, then that helps actually us and our automatic scanning process to be more relaxed. Because if I don't know when this session ends, I'm just going to keep asking myself, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? When is this going to end? And so it's important sometimes to really identify that very explicitly, and notice, then be able to take that in. So Aaron, you say this time frames help us feel safe. Yeah, like physical spaces, exactly. So time and space, and we all have perhaps different ways of different things we need to feel safe, right? Okay, so that's the mosaic. And orientation is part of what we are experiencing. So then the way in which we experience the world is through these 6 channels. And there are sort of we can enrich this ecosystem of how we connect to our experience through different postures. And I've already spoken about these a little bit, and we're not going to have time to practice them all, but we will practice them relationally and kind of in a few minutes afterwards. So clinically, there's a lot of evidence to show today. Some that I'm going to show here. Some of them are more my own sort of clinical experience. There's not necessarily empirical data to back it up. And others are more sort of theoretical. So there's a mix around them. So there are ways in which we can relate to our experience with a quality of compassion, quality of grief, quality of forgiveness, benign neglect. Benign neglect meaning that if we feel something challenging, but it's not too challenging and we can pay attention to what's going on and that's what's going good, then that can be helpful. Assertiveness, equanimity, friendliness, joy, gratitude, and gratitude, right? Those are the 9. And we'll practice a little bit of friendliness today. Friendliness. So this is the what of our experience. What are we experiencing? And this is how we can experience it, right? So it seemed, Aharon, from what you said, that when you noticed something in your desk there or in your office that you didn't notice before, there was kind of a bit of a surprise and kind of a fun surprise, right? It wasn't like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I never noticed that. I mean, if you said that, maybe they would have been a bit critical, but it sounded like it was a bit more surprised. Am I right?
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, if there was something serious in my room that I never noticed,
Right.
I don't know, like a leak or I don't know, something with electricity, I could get nervous. I mean, luckily I didn't find anything bad, but yes, it could go a different path.
Right. So it wasn't something so serious or dangerous.
Yeah,
and so exactly. So the surprise was kind of gentle or even kind of joyful. But it could have been, maybe very intense and as you say, threatening, and maybe sort of compassion might have been more helpful to bring in to the experience, or maybe some grief. Let's say, you notice a picture of someone that you lost recently and you had noticed them. And so maybe grief comes online. And so there are all sorts of ways we can hold our experience. And that's really key for us to be able to feel regulated internally. And we can do this by ourselves. I spend about 3 months in silence alone every year in meditation retreats. And I really systematically connect to my experience with these qualities. I make an effort to, moment after moment, hour after hour, day after day, week and month after month, to bring gratitude, bring joy, bring equanimity, bring forgiveness, grief, and compassion whenever there are challenging experiences. And what that does is that in terms of our nervous system, we all have a window of tolerance, which means that we can all be with a certain level of arousal sympathetically, And then when things become too intense, like let's say I'm speaking with a colleague, and that colleague, I'm obsessed as a Swiss person, and I don't know if this is all cultural, but I'm obsessed with time. And so when I have a colleague that comes late to one of my meetings, I'm better now, but I mean, I used to be quite upset. And if there are 3 or 4 people in the meeting, let's say half of the group, or even 3/4 of the group that are late, I tend to rev up. And so I have a window of tolerance for, people to be late, and a number of people. And then I start to become overwhelmed. But the overwhelming process happens gradually. And this is the same for all of us. We all have this pattern for different things. So let's say, we're here and we're in the meeting and it's all good. And then 1 person comes late, and then 2 people come late, and then actually 4 people come late. And then, so I'm regulated and grounded and just exploring my experience at that time. And then suddenly I can't help myself. I can't calm down anymore. And then I go into a hyper arousal, maybe fight or flight. And then somebody comes in that they're late, and they said, "Oh, I wasn't late. You never told us what time the proper hour of the meeting was." And then, okay, it's like, wow, already you came late, then you didn't apologize, and then you tell me I'm the one that made a mistake. And suddenly it's like it keeps arousing there and shutting down, and I shut down, right? So we have a gradual intensity of responses in our nervous system, and flighting is insufficient, and so I freeze and go into hyperarousal. And so these different postures that I showed are able to help me. I'm able to accompany my nervous system states with these different postures as I go through this example. So when, there's a number of people that are there and 1 or 2 people that are coming late, it's like, okay, I can be friendly, it's all good. And then one person arrives and, they arrive and they say hello and, I'm joyful to see them. So it doesn't matter that they're so late. And then they come in, a few many people, and then it's like, oh, I bring compassion to my anger, or I bring compassion to my frustration, or just a sense of helplessness, that I can't control other people, of course. And then maybe I can bring equanimity in my own mind. When I feel totally frozen, I don't know what to do, I'm disorganized, I just can't cope with the fact that there's just so much challenge around me. It's like, okay, let me just be with this sense of feeling frozen and not doing anything, right? It's just bring a sense of equanimous awareness. So these attitudes help us to regulate so that then, ideally, we're able to bring down the intensity and come back down within the window of tolerance. That's the first way in which we can regulate ourselves, by practicing these. And then the second one is that eventually, over time, as you can see here, the window of tolerance increases. So there's a lot of data to show, these contemplative practices of kindfulness, of mindfulness, of joy, of compassion, of gratitude. They increase our neurobiological availability to increase our coping ability when we face threat, when we face challenge, so that even when we face these very difficult nervous system states, we can remain equanimous, we can remain compassionate. So these practices transform our capacity to feel good inside. Now, when we think about living in community, this is really, really essential. Like, I've spent a number of weeks and months in different communities, and if there is one single factor why communities fail, it's because there are human disagreements and emotional intensities that people are not able to hold. They're not able to contain enough to then discuss and then understand each other's positions and then find a way to maybe compromise. And if you think about just the wider world, why do wars start? Why do we have conflicts and challenge in such intense ways? It's because, in a way, people experience things and there's not enough space, there's not enough capacity to hold the intensity and the complexity. And so with these qualities of equanimity, of compassion, of joy and friendliness, we're able to create more space, to hold more charge, to hold more intensity. So that's why, and we need to start with ourselves. Like, we need to start with our own minds. It's how much is it fair to expect others to have compassion when I perhaps don't have compassion for myself, or I don't have compassion for others, right? So that's one of the Buddhist presuppositions. Okay, so I want to share maybe 2 or 3 more slides, and then we go into a practice of regulation and co-regulation together. So how do we feel good together, and how, by feeling good together, we're able to increase the way in which we can deal with challenge and nervous system dysregulation in communities. One theory, social baseline theory by Bex and Cohen, which is an evidence-based theory. They've developed a lot of data to show and make the links that they describe, is that we evolved as humans to be together. It is unnatural for us to be alone. Our natural ecosystem, evolution has unfolded in such a way that our natural living environment is to be with other people, and not just other people, but other people that we get along with, at least to a relative extent. Maybe we don't get along very well with everyone, but we get along sufficiently with most people around us. That's an ecosystem that it is natural for us to be with others. And so if you want, that's us, and then we have all the others here. And Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford, as an experimental psychologist, he's done a lot of research to show that actually there's kind of a multiplicative dynamic to the number of people that we have in each of our circles. So usually we have one person that we're very close to, and then there's double that or 3 times that we're relatively close to, and he goes through quite a rigorous way of describing these different levels. And then there's about 15 people in our like immediate circle, and we usually have on average around 15 people around us that we see on a day-to-day basis. Up until 150, which is the size of and sort of optimal size of a community, is the Dunbar number. It's rare for communities to go beyond 150, because if you do so, our memory is not able to retain everybody's names, and there's all sorts of dynamics that show that 150 tends to be quite an optimal number for people to come together. Now, the key thing I wanted to show here is that actually, when we don't have these people around us, our nervous system capacity is reduced generally. So our brain and our nervous system functions optimally when we are surrounded by loved ones, and a certain number of loved ones. And if we have less loved ones around us, of course, these are general metrics, right? So individuals might have different metabolisms around these. But if you take certain people around us, if we're around less people, then neurobiologically, it takes more effort to do the same tasks. So let me just do an experiment together again with us, together. Let's just do a 2 or 3 minute meditation. Just to practice.
Do you mean any task or task related to the group? Yeah.
Well, they didn't do experiments with all tasks, so I don't think we could say all tasks, but a number of tasks, and one in particular that they used in the experiments that we're going to try out together right now.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah. So we did some meditations already. This is going to be a little guided meditation just for 2 minutes, and it's going to have an image. Okay. So I invite you to keep your eyes open or close them. And this is an experiment they did clinically, right? So this is what they used. I invite you to imagine in front of you, there's a road, and you're walking along the road in a nature area. So maybe there's some trees around and it's kind of nice. And there's a hill that's coming up just as you're walking. And this hill is, let's say, about 45 degrees uphill. So it's fairly steep, right? It's going to take a little bit of effort to get up that hill. And it's quite long. You can't quite see the end of it as you walk. And so I invite you to walk and to notice with your backpack, you have a backpack on, there's your water there, there's some food, and just to notice the reaction in the body right now as you engage on going up that hill. Maybe you feel even your muscles mobilizing in the legs. Maybe you feel the heart sort of tensing, right? So you're going up that hill now, and it's taking some effort. It's not happening by itself. Okay. Okay, 3 more seconds, just going up that hill alone. Okay, let's just take a pause here. 5 seconds pause. We can let go of the hill. We can let go of the nature area. And now we're together. Okay? We're all together. And we also have one of our really good friends with us. So we add one more person here. Okay? We have a really good friend with us. And we are walking on that same path. We're walking. And in that nature area, we have our backpack. It's a little bit heavy, but it's doable. And suddenly we arrive at that hill. We see the hill again. noticing how that hill looks now. We're all together, we're with our friend, and we're about to go up the hill together. And just noticing, what's the felt sense of how does the hill look like? Does it change? Is it the same? Does it appear the same way, or does it change? Does it feel the same to know that we're going to go up that hill, or does it change a little bit? And just really taking a couple of moments to notice the impact in the body, the fact that we're going to go up, that we're now going up that hill together with an extra one of our friends. Okay, 3 more seconds. Walking up all together. Okay, let's take another pause here. What's that like? What were these 2 different experiences like for you? I noticed a strong expression for you, Beatrice. What was it like for you? I'm curious. Yeah, could you say more?
Yeah, when this friend arrived, I felt like we could walk singing together. We have this way of doing things. Then when we have to walk long distances, there is a song we sing together. So, but I didn't feel like or even remember when I was alone in the past.
Right.
So my physical disposition, my mental disposition to do that changed completely.
And it changed in what way? I'm really curious. Like, the fact that you could.
In a way that it felt it would be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. Yeah. And whether let me just go one step further. If it was fun, did it feel like it would be more effort or less effort?
Less, because it felt lighter. The first time when you said, "Oh, we are coming back," when I saw everyone on the screen, I was like, "Oh, it feels good to be here, not sweating," because I was in a place with a very bright sun scenario.
Right. Great. Great. So being with a friend, being with us, it feels lighter and more fun, right? And you can sing. Great. Thank you for that sharing. Is there one other person who'd like to share a little bit about your experience? Yeah, Vic.
So on solo, the whining mind kicked in, seeing the hill, kick it in. I wonder if there's a hill beyond that hill. God dang it. Okay, do it. And as a group, this might be just me, but I was immediately looking to see who might need some extra help getting up this hill. So one thing was that I was out of mind. I was looking out toward others, so I wasn't thinking so selflessly about my misery, right? So, but it was a little different shit. I wouldn't say it was necessarily joyous. I feel a responsibility to the group.
Yeah.
And make sure it's a little different. Yeah.
Brilliant. And that's a great experience. Thank you for sharing, Vic. So it sounds like, there was a bit of neurotic movement when you were alone. It's like, oh, it's this hill. Is there going to be another hill? And how many hills are there in this walk? And then really a different mindset, maybe a more generosity or service in terms of being with others. And that's really interesting.
Right.
And yeah. So the data shows, Dan, you'd like to share, please? Yeah.
So I was walking up the hill above the home of Jan Bon in Norway. And it was fun that your description matched what the place I had chosen before you continued describing. I really like that. So when I did in real life, I was by myself. I was very eager to see what was around the next bend. If Jan had been with me, he could have told me what was around the next bend, and I probably would have been a little more calm and connected.
Yeah. Great. And thank you for sharing that. It sounds like on both experiences, there was a lot of positive emotions, just different styles. One was a bit more vigorous and the other one might have been a little bit more relaxed. Yeah, but both positive. Great. So one of the things that we've seen in the data around this experiment is that when we're alone, we budget a certain level of glucose consumption to go up that hill. And when we're together, we budget another level of glucose consumption for that hill. And what we see is that we budget much less energy when we are together than when we are alone. And so what we do is we tend to spend a lot more energy for the same level, for the same effort when we're alone than when we're together. So of course, this is metadata, and a lot of people actually really enjoy walking alone rather than to be in a group. So this is don't think that this is necessarily the case for everyone. But there is this trend around the fact that for the same task, because we are with others, think of a group of chimps. Like, I love going on safaris. Like, and think of a group of chimps. You have one chimp that generally is the responsibility to look out for danger, or maybe two. And because we know they are looking out for danger, we can rest, or we can play, or we can do this or that. But if not, then we have to look around and see if there's danger, and we also have to look for food, and we have to do all the tasks ourselves. But we can distribute cognition, we can distribute awareness, tasks, and responsibilities when we are with others. And so for each task, we tend to be much more focused and efficient in a way as well. It's shown now in terms of neurobiological budgetary resources. So there's, we budget resources at a neurobiological level for everything we do. And because we tend to budget less when we're with friends, then it's actually less effort to do the same thing when we're with them. Aharon, yeah, did you have a reaction, a comment, question?
Yeah, first of all, I think that's a fascinating concept, which I wasn't aware of, but it really connects to many things I'm going to talk about actually in my session. Yeah, see, Dan is nodding. It really connects to, I mean, on a large scale, it can also explain social polarization. I mean, you described a very nice situation where we have friends and we have community. The question is, what happens when we don't, when people are lonely, and what kind of negative behaviors that fuels. So that's because that's the reality for many people. Now, the other question I had is, I mean, that's more like a comment. The question I have is, I'm a cyclist as a hobby, a mountain biker, and my question is, so what happens when you climb a hill in a biking race, in a competition? So you have one people around you, but they're not your friends necessarily. And it's not for life or death, it's just a sports event. But do you invest more resources or less? Or I mean, it feels more exhausting to be in a competition than just to climb a hill by yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess there's at least two factors. One is that, well, just on your first point, I think it's a really excellent point. And in fact, more and more of clinical practice is gearing towards social connection, because we're seeing that social isolation is the most impacting factor for issues in mental health. Right. Social isolation is the number one most impacting factor for mental health, and also even physiological health for certain diseases like cardiovascular diseases and diabetes, obesity, and such like that. So I could not agree more with you on that and how important that is. That's personally also why I'm gearing more towards group work and community work rather than individual practice. Now, on your second question, on your second point, there's two things. One is that when you're having fun, okay, you can compete and have fun, right? It can be a mostly fun exercise. You are turning on the social engagement system, and you are turning on the most efficient nervous system capacity in terms of resource usage. So to the extent that you're able to have fun while you're competing, I would say that being present with others is going to tend to be, efficacious, we could say, if we use that term. Now, the other point is that, and that's obviously, in a way, inversely proportionate, to the extent that you're competing aggressively, or that you need to win and the others to lose, in terms of the result, then you're in a more of an us versus them dynamic. And in that sense, you're actually not considering the other people as your peers. And therefore, you are not benefiting from their presence to feel more regulated. In fact, it tends to be the opposite. It increases the level of stress, the level of needing to feel like you need to win in order to feel good. And that, increases the adrenaline, and then you're able to channel that into more energy. So when you cycle, actually, it's helpful. But as a sustained nervous system state, it's actually problematic to consider others, and if they win, as problematic to your own mental health. Does that make sense? So I'd say momentarily, there's a goodness to that. And then if you do that for prolonged periods of time, you are dissociating yourself from them. And that tends to push you to override and to keep on making perhaps more efforts than would be healthy for you to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, friends. So I'd like to share one last thing, and then we can go into a 5-minute practice before we close. Well, maybe I've shared enough. Maybe we go into the practice right away. One of the things that's really helpful then in terms of these peers is to be able to feel like others are our friends or our peers. And how do we do that in a way systematically? So we have tricks as clinicians, this is our training, right? We learn to become friends with people to create a safe space. And one of the things that we do, and I'd like us to practice it in a breakout room for about maybe 5 minutes altogether, is to reflect back what we heard. Because reflection, in a way, it's like implicitly in terms of the nervous system, it's saying, I am you and you are me. And so we can then broaden our quality of awareness. We can feel like the other is ourself. And that broadening of awareness, that broadening of the self, is a way for us to reduce how much resources we're using to regulate our nervous system on a moment-to-moment basis. So what that looks like practically, we'll do 3 rooms, Beatrice, and if you're up for it, you can practice as well. I think that would be fun. One of the things that we'll do is we'll just share one thing that we experienced today that was pleasant. So one thing that we experienced today that was pleasant. Maybe in this session, maybe in other sessions, maybe earlier today. And if it's early for you, Dan, maybe there's like some breakfast or something. So one thing that we experienced today that was pleasant, and then the other person reflects back and checks to see if they understood correctly. So let's say I tell you, this morning I was able to have a nice croissant with some hazelnut chocolate cream, and that was just so delicious. I still feel it in my stomach right now. And then you tell me, oh, so if I understand correctly, you really enjoyed that you had your croissant this morning and are still enjoying it right now. Did I get you right? And you can say at the end, did I get you right? Because then that really explicitly shares it. So we share an experience that's pleasant from today. Okay, this is person 1. And then the other person reflects back, and you can use the same words or different words. And then you say, did I get you right? And then the first person says, not quite, and you just repeat it or say more, or you say yes. And then finally, what's it like for you to feel, right now for you to feel like with me, you to be understood? What's it feel like right now with me to be understood? So what we're looking for is a felt sense of how it is to be with someone that understands us. And we just take a moment, like 5 seconds, to check in the body, check in the experience. So what I propose to do is basically is really just 1 minute, 1.5 minute, this exercise, 2 minutes at most. And then we switch, and then we come back for a short closing. So are we ready, Beatrice? Yeah. So choose who's person 1, person 2, and then you basically share, did I get you right? And then if they say yes, it's like, oh, so how is it right now in this moment with me that I understand you? Does that feel clear for everyone? Yeah, great. So I'm happy to share the instructions again, the sentences again in the chat afterwards. So let's go into pairs then, please. Ah, you're waiting for me to open the rooms. Ah, okay.
Just finishing. Please, a little patience. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So I'll share the slide again just in case.
Did you get an invitation to join the room?
I see that we've got some folks coming in for the next session, and just so you know, Boaz is still finishing up his workshop.
So we'll close very quickly so that we don't impede on the next time. Thank you, Dan. So yeah, maybe we can just, oh, there's still Beatrice. Is Beatrice here? No, not yet. Yeah, we'll just wait for
Beatrice is closing the breakouts, but she hasn't left hers yet. Yeah.
Maybe we can just take 20 seconds, 30 seconds to share one word or a short sentence of how it was to share that with the other person, and to be maybe reflected back in the way in that little breakout room. There's something there for us in terms of how we can be supported by others in how we feel and how we experience ourselves. Yeah, so it's reinforcing, Dan, thank you for sharing that. More likely to remember the experience, so there's something about embedding it and embodying it in a deeper way. Yeah. Nourishing, connecting. Yeah. Super. And I can also say in my little dyad, I felt like Aharon, you felt really present with me and helped also feel kind of more, therefore, present with myself. Like I could be more relaxed. I didn't have to be, so worried about whether what I was saying was meaningful or such.
Yeah, I've had the same, very safe. I think that's the key word.
Yeah. And Beatrice, different experiences, but very similar conclusions. Yeah, super. So safety, and it's very simple in a way, isn't it? This quality that just reflecting back what we heard, it's like we don't have to be geniuses, we don't have to be very creative, but we do have to be present. And that does take perhaps some pre-work inside ourselves with these qualities that we mentioned. So Cornelia, Vic, Aharon, thank you very much for your presence, and Beatrice and Dan, even more grateful for your organization and sharing and Zoom tech support.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Boaz.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, Aditi.
Oh, he left.
Nice to meet you. Unfortunately, I am chairing a session in a different room, so I will need to leave here very quickly. Beatrice, you might want to hand host duties over to Steve, ideally to Jan, but he's not here yet, so maybe to Steve, who is the chair of the next one.
Sure. And looking forward to meet you when I'm in US, March and April 2024.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Excellent. I will need to go.
Sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Hi, Aditi. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you, and warm greetings from India.
Yeah, it's great. And look forward to this session. That looks like Kalakantha. Is it? Oh, perfect. There we are. Welcome.
Yes, Steve, that's me.
Yeah.
And then Garanga will join us as well, right?
Yes, he'll be joining soon. He'll be joining
Perfect.
soon.
And then we will, let's see, to share screen, I need to, let me read my, because Kalkanta, you were hoping to share some stuff. There's some directions here. Host privileges, promote all Zoom to co-host. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Make a co-host. Yes. And oh, hello, Jan.
Hello. Oh, sorry I was late. I had to go off.
And then, so Aditi, I was just going to welcome everybody and introduce introduce the topic, and then just give a short bio of the three of you.
Sure.
and then you can take it from there. Was that a good plan or?
Yeah. In fact, that's the plan. Yeah.
Okay, sounds
Perfect.
good.
Okay.
In fact, I'll also
And
sharing a brief, PPT to start with, and then, Gauranga, Prabhu, he would be speaking, and then Kalkantaji also has a short PPT. So
okay,
I'll unshare and he can then share the PPT.
perfect. Perfect. And
Sure.
I will just I will send you little notes if you guys were just in
Sure.
time, but we've got an hour and a half, so it should be fine on that. And then towards the end, I will just close by thanking people and so on and so forth.
Sure. Looks good.
Yeah. Kalkanta, do you want to try sharing your screen just to make sure that works?
Yeah, let's try that. Let me just see how that works. Let me just see where is that?
So you will see here a green button saying share screen.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see which session is coming up. Okay, here it is. I think here we are. Yes, let's see how it goes. All right, can you see it?
Yes, that looks great.
Okay. All right. So I think Dr. Aditi wants also to share, right?
Yeah, to start with, yes.
So let me stop. You want to share yours to see if it comes?
Yes,
I see a name which, oh, she's left. Beatriz seems like a Brazilian name. Beatriz Arruda.
Yes, yes, she is. I think she's in Rio, isn't she, Jan? Or where is Beatrice?
I hope you all can see my presentation.
Yes, that looks great, Dr. Aditi.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll just stop share and then.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, Calcutta, our next conference is in Portugal. So there's the Brazilian contingency that is helping organize that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice.
Language-wise, it helps.
Yeah.
That's very good. I'm good friends with Robert Hall. I don't know if you know him from Gen Europe.
Okay.
I've heard his name. Yeah.
Oh, Jan knows him, right? Robert Hall?
I've heard his name. I don't really know him, but I know he's active in eco villages and permaculture. Just to clarify, Steve, shall I spotlight people as they talk?
Sure, that would be great, Jan.
Yeah.
And you can always message me if you need to pass that duty on or whatever. But
yeah. So that's good. I have to get up occasionally to feed the fire, to feed the monkey, because it's a nice -8 here now, but we've had a snowstorm today, so things are pretty quiet now.
Wow.
But I have to keep the fire going. So I'm but those of you who are here, my name's Jan. I'm from Norway, and I'm helping just to run the little technical things right now. So
yeah, Jan is quite humble because he's also one of the great sustainability and regenerative agriculture teachers in Europe and Israel. So he particularly will be interested in a lot of the things Kalkanta and Dr. Aditi that you are saying. So
yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Great meeting you, Jan. And in fact, the previous session, you were just logging off and I came in. So I heard you for just last 2 minutes. That's it. And I think Gaurangaji is also here.
Gauranga.
Hi, how are you, Steve? Great connecting with you, Steve.
Yes, nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's pretty late in India.
It's pretty early in California.
Right.
Yes, putting this conference together, it's been a truly global affair, but trying to find times that work for India, Brazil, California, Norway is
And how did you manage Australia, Steve?
Yeah. Well, Australia was a real challenge, but the Australians are getting up in the middle of the night and it's super early, and yeah. But we are recording them all too. So if people are, because what we found is, yesterday's sessions were almost all in the middle of the night for me. So that was nice to catch up on them afterwards.
Yeah. So literally ICSA doesn't sleep.
The what?
ICSA, the conference doesn't sleep at all for these
Yeah, it doesn't sleep. Yeah.
Literally. Yeah.
The conference that never sleeps.
True. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, it's supposed to enlighten, and in literal sense also it doesn't sleep in that sense.
Yeah.
So do we wait for 4 or 5 minutes and then we start?
Yeah, and what I found in the previous sessions is people sort of filter in often 5-10 minutes after, but that's okay. They can catch up on it. We'll just start around. We've been waiting just a couple of minutes before, or a couple of minutes after, like my time, 17 minutes after the hour, and then we'll push record then and get started. Yeah, Dr. Aditi, where are you located?
I'm also in India. I'm in Mumbai.
Okay, Mumbai. Nice.
Yeah.
And is Gurunga in the eco village, or is he?
Yeah. I think he's in Eco.
Yeah, I'm at the Eco Village. Yes, Steve, that's right. And
Yeah.
looking forward to hosting you sometime here.
Yes. I will be there next fall.
Great.
Yeah, I'll at least be. Can't remember exactly the schedule, but I'm teaching on a ship that we port in somewhere I think just north of Mumbai. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't seen it yet.
I think we're recording now. Is that correct?
Well, we should probably I might stop it and start it just so it's easier for Anton.